All right. Welcome back. So the next part of the program that we have planned is a roundtable with the business leadership team that really has been delivering on all the commitments that we've been talking about today. And importantly, these are the gentlemen who are going to be taking us into the future. So after a brief segment interview, or after a brief segment overview, each will do a briefing on their particular parts of the business. We'll turn it over really for Q&A from the audience. So get your tough questions ready. Will probably be about 10 minutes of prepared remarks, and then we're going to turn it over to you guys for some Q&A. So with that, gentlemen.
So good morning. I'm Andrew Barry, and I've got the privilege of looking after the government services, as it was called yesterday, government solutions, as it's now called today, business across Europe, Africa, and the Middle East.
Hi, good morning. My name is Byron Bright, and I have the honor of running our government solutions U.S. portfolio. I've been with KBR about 9 years, and I was here 2 years ago on the stage. I think I was a few days on the job in this role, and it's just been an amazing transformation, and I'm really excited to be here.
So good morning. My name is Doug Kelly. I lead global sales and marketing for KBR's technology business. I've been with KBR about 10 years now.
Hi, good morning. My name is Fahan Mujib, and I lead the delivery solutions as part of the energy solutions business, and I've been with KBR for over 30 years.
Morning, I'm Jay Ibrahim. I look after the services part of energy solutions, and I'm glad to say that a couple of days ago, 1st of May, I celebrated my 4th anniversary with KBR.
I think I'm going to start with, Andrew and I are going to start with a little bit of an overview of the government solutions segment. And no offense to the other gentlemen up here, but I think Andrew and I have the coolest jobs, or really our guys in the back with a spacesuit might have the coolest jobs. But today we're overseeing approaching a $4 billion portfolio in 2019. We have over 18,000 employees around the world, and it's really a great honor to interact with them and see the exciting work that they do. And from a business perspective, we've posted double-digit organic growth the last 5 quarters in a row. So it's been just a really tremendous time and a great transformation story. When I think about where we were 3 years ago, this executive team and those in the audience, we set out on a very specific strategy to change our government business. We were already an industry leader and well-known in the energy sector, but we wanted to create a sustainable, predictable, technology-led government portfolio to really become the base of our business. And so, I think we were ahead of our industry in that journey. You've seen in the government sector some consolidation and other folks doing similar activities. But I can sit here today and say that all of our acquisitions are fully integrated. We have high-performing teams. We know who we are, and we know what we're good at, and we know where we're going. And it's just really, really an exciting time. We have over 115 locations around the world with people working every day just doing amazing, amazing things. So I often get asked, how do we make money in the government sector? So many folks don't really understand the government contracting side of the house. And really it's about combining decades of past performance, the strength of domain expertise, of just great people that really understand the mission areas and the individual focus areas of what the government needs. But there's also an art in government about how you bid, win, and execute contracts. So you really have to understand the regulated environment, both in allied countries as well as in the U.S. So working with the government can be a little different. And I think we have some of the best business development teams that really understand that and know how to win. But we get paid to provide highly skilled people to do these missions. So they're delivering engineered or digital solutions for our different customer sets in very focused mission areas. And so either in augmenting the mission role or in sometimes outsourcing from the government, vital mission areas. And they do this primarily on a reimbursable basis. We deliver mid to high single digit, Mark would like it to be teens, mid to high single digit margins. And it's a very low capital intensive business. So that's a great business model. And most of our contracts are 3 to 10 years, but they're actually on programs that can go out for decades. And these platforms and programs can go for decades. In the U.S. portfolio, we like to talk about the full life cycle support that we do. and we're operating in research and development, we're operating in sustainment, we're overseas in logistics. And I think many people know the old KBR and our logistics overseas support work. We still do that work, and we're very proud of that work. And arguably, I would say we're one of the best in the industry of taking care of our men and women in uniform around the world. But the new KBR is so much more diverse. And we do so many exciting things in systems engineering and integration. And the capabilities that we have are directly aligned to the U.S. National Defense Strategy, and more importantly, their modernization. Greg talked about that. So whether that's in cyber, whether that's missile defense, unmanned systems, we have active work in all of those capability areas, and that's really driving a lot of the synergies that we see throughout our performance metrics.
And it's the same in the international part of the business. We've got a very diverse portfolio of work. But let me first talk about Aspire, which is a project that many of you are familiar with. It really is the jewel in the crown of my part of the business. It's a project which is really about the redevelopment and then the base operations maintenance of 6 of the key British Army garrisons in the UK. We look after about 1/3 of the British Army across the estate that we look after. Last year, we took over 100% interest in certain of the entities that are in the Aspire portfolio, and that significantly enhanced and enlarged the predictable revenue and profit stream that we get from that part of the business. As a consequence of the growth that we've seen in our UK business, we're a UK government key supplier, and that's materially improved our profile in the UK. The strong baseload of work that we've got in the UK has enabled us to grow and diversify. Byron's talked about some of the cool stuff we do. I just wanted to bring some of that to life. We got some interesting projects. Today, we own and operate 3 fleets of aircraft on a 17-year contract, which is enabling military flying training in the UK. We're the industry lead on an integrated project for the Home Office and the police forces across the UK, modernising the way crime scene investigation is undertaken. And enabled by Byron's business, we're now looking at pursuits and opportunities in the space sector, which is really quite exciting. It's a great time to be in this part of the business.
Yeah, so I think we have a really strong, attractive business model. We have great backlog and that goes out for years. And for Andrew, I think we talk about recompetes in our business. I think when's your next recompete?
We were talking about this last night.
2041. So
Aspire goes through to 2041, so we can line up the recompete in 2039.
But we have really attractive market conditions right now with strong budgets in all of our core customer sets. We're really excited about where we're going. You can see our targets on the screen here, and Andrew and I are personally involved in setting these targets and looking at the individual opportunities. And I really believe that we feel very, very confident in meeting this of kind of the upper single digits of growth over the next several years.
So Byron, you and Andrew, you talk about how cool you are, and I always kind of challenge that and how cool your jobs are, but I noticed when everyone was coming in, no one was going over to the technology piece. They were all going over to the spaceship. So I might have to give you that. However, I might say that in the KBR technology part of the business, it's probably the most exciting piece. I've been with KBR about 10 years, and I've experienced firsthand that consistent and regular growth for the technology business. And so similar to Byron, people often ask, how does the technology business make money? Well, our clients are really in 3 different areas. They're in refining, they're in petrochemicals and chemicals, and ammonia and fertilizers. And KBR develops technologies, and there's several parts to the solution that we offer to our clients. The first part is really the heart, which is the license piece. It consists of the patents, it consists of the intellectual property, it consists of the technology know-how of our really, really smart people in the KBR technology business. And we take that and we license it. And licensing really means we give our clients the right to operate using that intellectual property. So we get a fee for that. But the license is only one part of the business. If you just have a license, you have a right to operate, you need to do much more than that. So the second piece is really the basic engineering design package. And that is, taking the license, taking the specific needs of the client, and putting together a package that can then be used by engineering companies and groups like Jay and Farhan to do the detailed engineering and construction for those plants. The third area that we have is really an area called proprietary equipment. And that's equipment that's special equipment. It's not just the pipes and the heat exchangers that are typical, but it's maybe internals. It's some special equipment that really commands a higher and more attractive margin than just traditional equipment. And we bundled that together with our offering. The fourth area is probably the most exciting, and that is the area of catalyst. A catalyst is really, you can think of it as a pellet or a powder that is part of the process that allows or optimizes the reactions that take place in our processes, that really it's the differentiation, the IP. There's a lot of IP in catalyst. The good part about catalyst, though, is not only does it have good, attractive margins, but it also is a recurring revenue stream for KBR, because catalyst usually has to be replaced on about a 3 to 5 year cycle. So as we look to new technologies to add to our portfolio, we're very, very interested in the catalyst piece. The final area is really around our technical services. We don't leave our clients after projects in technology. We have a technical services organization. It's enhanced by many of the digital technologies that Greg talked about earlier. And it allows us to have that long-term, close, intimate relationship with our clients. The value to that is we often hear about projects coming forward, and many times we help shape which projects are the best projects for our clients. We have that information. I'm able to share it with Jay and Farhan, so they're able to get engaged very, very early in the process, which really helps the overall KBR business, the one KBR that Stuart was talking about earlier. So these synergistic offerings come together and really have been the foundation of our past performance, and it really allows us to have confidence that we're going to be able to deliver on the numbers that Mark's going to talk about in more detail and that are shown up here going forward. So sometimes people ask me, we've had consistent growth over a 10-year period, and sometimes people ask me, what do I think the reason that is, especially in some difficult times when our competitors have had some very down years. And I think there's really two reasons to that. The first reason is our global reach. We really, in technology, are a global company. We have 9 regions, China, North and Southeast Asia, Russia, India, Middle East, Europe, Latin America, and of course, here in North America. What that allows us to do is we have revenue coming from multiple regions. So as you know, in the global markets, some countries or some regions might be strong economically while others are weak. And just like diversifying our portfolio across KBR, it allows us to hedge because we operate in so many places. It also allows us, this reach allows us to really quickly respond to our customers' needs regionally and locally. We have local sales and support organizations literally around the world. We're able to go to our clients, we understand their challenges and what they need to do going forward. In fact, I'm not a stranger to frequent flyer miles. Stuart was just telling me last night, I think between me and a couple of other people in the technology business, we fly more than anyone else in the organization. In fact, Sunday I'm off to China from Newark here, so definitely not hurting for frequent flyer miles. The second area of our growth, I think, is really, really key, and that is the technology portfolio. I was talking with a client in our Houston office. It was a client that came in from China, and I was presenting. We have a slide that shows our main technologies. And I started to think back, about 10 years ago, what did this slide look like? And I kind of did some quick mental math, and I realized that KBR Technology has more than doubled our number of offerings in the last 10 years that we've been there. And this really allows us to diversify our offering, which allows us, I mentioned the industries we serve. When refining's up, maybe chemicals is down, ammonia's up, it allows us to have enough, broad enough portfolio to be able to respond and diversify for the different industries that we serve. It really helps us give some consistent growth. So if you look at, from an investment perspective, at our business model, we've had high margins in the mid-20s with increasing revenue from catalysts going forward. We believe in those targets. We believe, for the reasons I just talked about, that we'll be able to meet or exceed those targets. We run our business with negative working capital, which also always makes Mark very happy. He always gives a hurrah when those numbers come in. We have a diversified portfolio not only among the industries, but among the regions because of our global reach. And we continue to add new technologies. KSAT, as Greg mentioned, was a new technology. Now it's been deployed in China, and then we just announced an award here in North America, so very exciting. So we're on a path to maintain our 10 to 14% revenue growth going forward. Truly an exciting time and exciting part of KBR. Farhan?
Thanks, Doug. And you think your job is exciting, and these guys think the job is cool. So I'll openly say is that I think my job is pretty challenging there. So I've got to be realistic there, because whatever these guys actually think about, I've actually got to build it and then make sure it actually works as well there. So I'm quite happy with that there. And I think Stuart is always there to actually challenge me there, and I'm always up for the challenge. So what's in our energy solutions business? It consists of two global businesses. Jay looks after services, and I look after delivery. In Jay's business, it's primarily two parts in the services business: professional technical services and industrial services. And he's got long-term contracts. Most of the contracts are reimbursable in nature, so it's got a pretty steady state of business there. And the business that Byron and Andrew have, and also a large proportion of technology business as well there, it's reimbursable, steady, low-risk business. So what it does actually is it allows my part of the business to be really focused on the right deals we want to pursue, because what we pursue in delivery are the large transactions, say. So some of those large transactions are big programs that we deliver for our customers, like what we've been doing for Saudi Aramco in Sadara and COTC projects. So these are big $30, $20 billion programs that we're responsible to design and manage and deliver those programs. So when we manage a program for a customer, those are reimbursable contracts for us. We also do a lot of EPC reimbursable contracts as well. Like you saw, we announced early this year, we're doing work on Blade project for ExxonMobil. And more recently, we announced another project in the Permian that's another EPC reimbursable project there. So there are programs like that, which are large ones, but have a different commercial dimension. But then it allows us a focus on the major LNG and the petrochemical deals that we also focus on as well there. So that, where we focus on saying, is this the right opportunity? Is this the right competition for us? Can we get the right terms and conditions? And more importantly, can we actually make money? And if we talk about LNG, and I know a lot of people have interest in LNG, I can quite proudly say that we've been doing LNG work for 40 years. In every project in LNG that we've worked on, we've actually made money. Okay? So how many companies can actually stand up and say that every LNG project they worked on, they've actually made money? Very few companies in that space there. So we know when we have the right deal in front of us, yes, we can close the deal. And we see when a deal is actually not the right deal, we're actually ready to walk away from that deal as well. And we've actually done that in the last few years. When we got close to a finishing line, we didn't think the deal was right, we were ready to say pack up, and it's not the right deal to pursue. And I think that's the commercial discipline that you see in the new KBR, that we don't have to have a lump sum LNG deal if it's not the right deal. Now, where we are in that business today, we have some exciting opportunities in front of us there. We've got 6 to 7 major LNG transactions that are currently in different phases of actually development. Some we actually negotiated the deal. We're waiting for the clients to sanction projects there. So we're waiting for an FID to see. Some we actually submitted proposals, and we are actually in clarification process on those deals as well there. And some where we are actually in a very limited competition with either one group competing against us, or maximum there may be 2 bidders on a deal. So we play in a very selective group of competition in LNG. And as you've seen in the recent weeks, that competition is dwindling now. So I think we have less competition probably surviving in the LNG space, and that actually makes it more focused in terms of making sure we are actually chasing the right deal, and the deals that are there are going to be the one that we close as well. So now that's also becoming important is, yes, you may be able to secure a deal, but will that deal actually get to the finish line in terms of an FID? They can actually get sanctioned as well. Also, I think you heard from Greg that what we're doing in terms of technology as well, how can we make sure that we don't repeat the same mistakes that others have done in that business as well. So we have actually developed solutions that are more technologically advanced. They're actually choosing the right process technology, but more importantly, do we have the right execution techniques for those projects? So we are looking at substantially modernizing our plants, which give us more confidence in terms of quantities, in terms of execution, and it allows those executions to be done in a more controlled environment, but at the same time, it takes away a large part of the risk, which is especially in North America and the Gulf Coast area, which is both weather and productivity risk, because you eliminate that by moving those hours in a more controlled environment. So we feel quite confident that in our business, we are actually got the right solutions in front of us that we can actually offer to our customers a more energy efficient, a more sustainable, and I think for our shareholders and yourselves, a more predictable outcome as well there. Jay, you got some exciting stuff going on as well.
All right. Yes, it is indeed exciting and great times to be at KBR. The services business is about $1 billion in revenues this year in 2019. And when we add our 50% shares of Brown & Root Industrial Services, this will take us over $1.5 billion in revenues this year. I mean, Mark doesn't just get excited to hear about the negative cash flow, but also he gets excited when he hears figures in the billions. Right. Coming this morning, Tricia asked me of Barclays, she asked me, a couple of years ago, you came out here and you talked about the future is bright. So what are you going to be talking about today? Well, I reflected back and I thought, well, maybe I want to change my story a bit. So I'll start basically with that. I want to talk about where we were 2 years ago and show you our report card so you can judge us what we've done over the last couple of years. So 2 years ago, we sat in front of you, gave you an overview of what we used to call the E&C business at the time before we changed it into energy services. And we talked quite a bit about growth and sustainability. And in many areas, we felt like we were underpenetrated and really we had a plan in place. Today, let me share with you what we've done. And I'm going to cut it short, so I'm not going to talk about everything. I know time is limited. So let me start with the Middle East. In Saudi Arabia, we had some issues. We felt like really we could do better across both industrial services as well as the services that we're doing for Aramco. Today, this year, we'll execute over 1.3 million man-hours in our KBR AMCDE office. This is really quite a bit of improvement over what we've done over the last few years. Our industrial services in Saudi as well, with the extension of Sadara, with the win of Sadara and the extension of Sator that you've read over the last couple of days, really put us in a very strong position when it comes to maintenance. This year, our Saudi business will have the best year ever when it comes to the 2 joint ventures that we have in Saudi. Moving to the rest of the Middle East, a couple of years ago, we pretty much had 0 people in Oman. We're trying to establish ourselves in the UAE, and also we had no presence in Iraq. Between these 3 locations, by the end of this year, I would say probably will exceed 700 people. So coming out basically from nothing, almost nothing, to having 700 people. Our HVE center in Chennai, again, we were just starting this. We were in the 50 to 75 people range. I would say by mid-year next year, we'll exceed 1,000 people in Chennai itself. Moving north to Algeria, we really had 0 presence after we finished our Skikda project. I would say today, between what we're executing for Sonatrach and their partner in Algeria, we have about 150, 175 people between London, between Chennai, and in Algeria itself. Going to Azerbaijan, we just started our joint venture with SOCAR at the time. Again, started low base. I could say today we're over 200 people. And by the end of this year, we would have over 300 people in Azerbaijan. Going east to Singapore, we have really transformed the business from being a detailed design type of office to really now a consultancy and doing front-end engineering, because this is really where we believe the differentiation is. But really what brought it all together, we needed a big brother. Yeah, you couldn't do it on your own. You needed the technical expertise, you needed the resources, you need the internal collaboration, you need the theme of winning together. And this is really where our London office come in. We said, we want to grow, and we're going to grow together. So London at the time was about 500 people. Today, our London office is over 1,200 people, just in a couple of years. 90 to 95% of our business in London come in from the international business. So they've gone out and helped UAE, helped Saudi, helped Iraq, helped Algeria, helped Azerbaijan, but also capture a very good share of the business. But it's not just about London. I mean, when we go into these countries, Azerbaijan, into Saudi Arabia, into Iraq, into the UAE, it is about the local content. We go in there, our people don't have the itchy finger to go and shoot elephant. It's the opposite. They go and extend the hand, said, we want to work with you, want to be available. We want to build the trust. We want to build the relationship. This is what we're here for, to help you. And we leverage this relationship across all our businesses. So this is our report card, what happened in the past. So what's going forward? Our strategy is very sound. Greg talked about Horizon 1, Horizon 2, and Horizon 3, and we really take that and we implement it. So we have plenty going on in terms of that. Our repeated business, as Farhan mentioned, is great. 60, 70% of our business coming from repeated customer because they're happy that we have delivered the promise. Our people are happy. Stuart talked that he's got a great team. I say, Stuart, I challenge you that I have a greater team. Stuart talked about the secret sauce. I say, well, our sauce is extra. And the extra stands for hot, stands for tasty, and stands for a magnifique flavor that really comes from all the area that we work on. It's across the globe. So yes, Trisha, the future has been bright. It's going to continue to be brighter.
Right.
These guys talk about cool, talk about exciting, talk about challenges. But I say in services, we have the looks, we have the moves, we have the smarts. We bring them all together to perform the best dance and win the trophy. This is where one KBR come all together.
All right, gentlemen, thank you for that. That was great. So what we're going to do now is we're going to open up the floor for questions. So get your questions ready. And while the mics are coming out, I'll just go ahead and throw out the first one. So from an IR perspective, from a very selfish IR perspective, I get the question all the time about why these businesses are together and what the synergies are. So I think it might be helpful if you guys can just visit a little bit about the synergies, any recent synergies across the businesses.
Well, I'd like to take this to start with, since I'm still on the dance floor and there is plenty of people asking to dance. So you've heard me mention about Sadara and Satorp. Let me share with you a bit of story, how this has happened. So Satorp is a joint venture between Aramco and Total. It's a multi-billion-dollar business on its own right. It's a large petrochemical plant in Saudi Arabia. So a few years back, we really wanted to take our Brown and Root industrial services or industrial services out. And we thought Saudi would be the best place. So we really focused on Satorp, and we wanted to win it, and we did. So that was a great outcome for KBR, not just winning the first maintenance contract in Saudi, but also internationally, but also a bigger deal for Aramco, because that was the first time they've outsourced a maintenance contract. So over the last few years, we delivered exceptionally on our KPIs. We've won the Satorp CEO award in terms of HSE 3 times. So a few months ago, I sat down with the CEO of Satorp. He is a visionary. He really looked 10, 15, 20 years into the future. He said, Jay, you guys have done well with KBR, but really, what's next? I said, well, Sulaiman, we talked to you quite a bit about our technology, and we talked to you quite a bit about our government services. But really, what I'd like you to do is really, could you spare a couple of days and come to see us in the US, where you could feel it, you could touch it, you could see it, you can talk to our people. And he said, I'll do that, Jay. So for a CEO to commit himself, plus 4 of his executive team, to come in and spend a week with us in the US, really, to me, is a great illustration of the trust and the relationship. And then I introduced them to Byron's team and to Doug's team.
Yep.
So I'll let you talk to it, gents.
Well, you know, for me, it was a pretty great eye-opening experience, and we took them down and toured them to several different NASA facilities to show them the types of work that we do, and I was really amazed by what they were interested in. One of the topics that came up a lot was cybersecurity. In my business, we do cyber work. We have over 200 folks working on the Defense Health Agency, for example, doing risk management framework and threat analysis type work. And they were very interested, you know, as they look, and you're right, he's a visionary, and as they look at Internet of Things and adding sensors and new digital products into their refineries, security of that data and information is really important. They're very interested in our cyber range, where we can actually test hardware and simulate attacks, cyber attacks on various hardware. And so I think that was a great interest. Another thing that, you know, many of you saw the spacesuit out there, and they're very interested in the spacesuit. I told Jay, like, Jay, they're not going to care about what we do in a spacesuit. But really, they were amazed at the quality of work that we do. And when you think about that spacesuit, we have over 60,000 part numbers. And so a lot of that work is the maintenance and inventory and supply chain management. In every one of those parts, we have over $500 million worth of inventory, and every one of those parts are life-saving, critical parts. And so the ability to digitally track that, know its chain of custody, ensure the quality of that, and really manage that entire supply chain, I think was of great interest. And you can think about the complex facilities that Sathorpe has, and the ability to reduce cost and track and digitize their supply chain was another capability of just great interest.
Yeah, it was a great discussion, Jay. I mean, it was wonderful that you made that introduction, because one of the things we were able to do was talk with them about some of the solutions we had provided to other refining clients around the world, and we found some common interests. And so after this meeting, the Middle East team, our technical team in the Middle East, followed up, and now we're engaged in defining and helping them meet some of the challenges that they're facing and what technologies make sense for Sathorpe going forward. So it's been a really great opportunity to leverage the long-term relationship that Jay and his team had with the client.
Thank you. And then at the conclusion of the meeting, really, as all politicians do, I wanted to introduce Stuart so he could come out and kiss the baby. So we said, Sulaiman, what do you think about the visit? And he said, you know, it was great to see all the digital bit, all the NASA bit, the smart inventory, the technology. But he said, what I was amazed with is the people. So I walked into your offices. I saw basically your ENC folks at the time. I saw your government services. I saw your technology. I saw your Heritage Wiley. I saw your Heritage SGT. I saw your Heritage Honeywell technology. But he said, Jay, I couldn't tell who's which. Who was really that was amazed me. You guys had a culture that I haven't seen anywhere. And this is, again, an illustration about the secret sauce that Stuart has talked about. So since then, we extended the contract, as you read, for another 3 years. We're in serious discussion in technology, and also we're in serious implementation phase of what we're going to take forward out of the smarts of our government services or government solution into the refinery. It's really a model refinery for us. Andrew, I think you've got a bit to build on that as well.
Well, we've got another good example of working across the sort of business segments. And Sellafield is a nuclear decommissioning facility in the UK. We've just been nominated as the preferred bidder on a contract that has a life of up to 20 years. What the work is up there is really professional services, where they're looking at a very complex proposition of nuclear waste cleanup. And the skills that we've got from Farhan's and Jay's business, and the fusion of that with some of the government skills that we've got in my part of the business, really led to the success of that. And again, it's those people coming together, working together, the skills, the competencies that we have across the business that really made that a success.
Good.
If you can just say your name with your question, that would be great.
Great, thank you. Steve Fisher, UBS, maybe more directed towards Farhan. Farhan, you talked about the patience in the selection of LNG projects and the notion that competition is dwindling here. I guess I'm just curious, to be clear, I mean, will you be pursuing fixed price LNG projects? And if so, what is going to be different about your process relative to other peers in the industry? And I guess in the notion of the fact that competition is dwindling, if we just use an analogy of the power markets, where we've seen some of the exit of some of the other existing players, and that's opened up opportunities, but the slack has been picked up by other companies in the industry, more on the private side of things. So should we just assume that that would be the same case in the LNG market as well?
Sure, thanks, Dave. I think in terms of the opportunities, where we see the opportunities, we see a large proportion of opportunities still actually in the Gulf Coast area. I mean, that still seems to be quite attractive market as well. There's opportunities in Africa as well, and we see opportunities in Asia as well there. So there are a number of fronts where different customers actually looking at actually expanding their facilities. In terms of competition and why we are different, I think one, as I mentioned, is that we have a very good track record in LNG. We actually built up in terms of people, and we all talked about people. I've got people in my organization that have been with the company for 35, 40 years, and that's all they've been doing, actually doing complex projects all around the world. And some of them are actually second, third generation Brown Root employees, so they just come back because, I mean, the one, they like the company, the second, they like the work, and they also like how we do work as well. The third thing actually is we have very controlled processes in terms of estimating across our large projects as well. We have data that gives us productivity cost information across the entire globe in terms of which markets we operate as well there. So we have all that information that actually allows us to do very strong bids for the cost. But the other thing actually is we do not actually go and bid someone else's feed or design. If we are actually pursuing an LNG project, we would like to do the feed, and if the feed has been prepared in a design competition, then we have a lot of innovation comes in. If it's non-design competition, then we have a huge phase of design verification that happens that allows us the confidence saying, okay, we know exactly what we'll take to build it and how we're going to execute it as well. Now, where we're going to do lump sum work as well, I don't put any limitations or anything. I think it depends on what the right deal is for specific location. There are certain geographical locations which are very suitable for stick-built execution because the labor cost is cheap, so you can manage that, and the site is such where only stick-built can be done. For example, in Nigeria, we've done stick-built for many 10 years, 6 trains we built, so we know exactly what needs to be done in those locations there. And when you come to high labor cost environment there, then a modular solution is more attractive. As we talked about, move the hours away and actually do it that manner. And the final thing that you asked was actually, I mean, is there likelihood some other competitors may enter the market if the others are going out? I think it's different in the LNG space. Different new players have tried to come in that space, and it's different from either being a reimbursable contractor to suddenly enter into a lump sum market, or someone that's not been in LNG business to come in and actually do LNG business. The technology side of LNG business is not so hard, but it's a complexity of the entire facility to put it together. That's what makes it complicated. So it's not easy for any E&C company to just decide to participate in LNG business. So we believe that I think the competition is probably going to go back to where it used to be 10 years ago, a limited group of competent LNG contractors, and the commercial terms will actually follow along with that as well, as there's going to be limited number of contractors available and number of opportunities in front of us.
Thank you.
Chad.
Hi, it's Chad Dillard from Deutsche Bank. This question is for Farhan. So you talked about the increasing use of modularization. So I was just curious, how many of your projects are modularized right now? Where do you see that going? Are you seeing customer buy-in for that approach? And to what extent do you need to, I guess, increase ownership in fab yard assets to get there?
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's a huge amount of interest from the customer side on the modularization space. They're not only just in LNG, but also in the downstream sector as well. In LNG, we've been doing it for since 2009, the first modularized LNG plant was done. So 10 years, I mean, we were the first one to actually do a modular LNG plant. Last year, we actually did a full modularization of a petrochemical plant, the ethylene cracker, a MEG unit, and a polyethylene plant. And then in that case, the customer actually decided that the advantages of modularization were so significant, they also want to take advantage of where the modules get built as well. So they dictated that all the modules need to be built in China. So you're taking advantage of not only just the execution technique, but where the the best execution in terms of cost and labor availability could be done as well there. So we're seeing a very high level of confidence from the customers and a high level of engagement from the fabrication yards, and the number of yards that are available and the cost differential that's out there. And if you can, 75–80% of the man hours, you can actually take it away from a job site to a modular environment. And I've mentioned this in other places as well, that if you look at cost in the fabrication yard is like about $20–25 an hour all-in cost when you look at that. You look at site-based labor cost in Gulf Coast, $110–115 an hour. Just no comparison in terms of what you can do in terms of taking the cost away, but the big amount actually is the risk that you're taking away in terms of skilled workforce being available, being impacted by productivity and weather issues. So what you've got left now is actually the hookup and commissioning and the time that you need those resources for. So it's a huge benefit for the customers, but also actually taking away the risk aside as well.
Hi, Farhan, you're popular this morning. Two questions. One, some of the pushback I get on KBR in terms of a play on LNGs, the projects that you're positioned on, in the sense that people view whether you're bidding on the projects that are less likely to go forward, whether it's OSMR technology or sort of mid-scale LNG. So given the capacity constraints in the industry and what could be coming, how do you balance between bidding on some of those alternative type LNG projects versus the ones that people think will really go forward? And then my second question is, in particular in this cycle with some of the issues that your peers are having, selecting the right joint venture partner is critical. So can you talk about whether there are opportunities to improve your competitive positioning by teaming up with different joint venture partners, or are there opportunities there? Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Jamie. I think, in terms of the selection of the projects, the dynamics of the market has changed. Over the last 5–7 years ago, most of the LNG projects actually that were being developed what I call developer-type customers. The majority of the IOCs actually had enough going on in their portfolio. There were no new projects coming in terms of future development. And what we've seen in the last 12 months is the majority of the IOCs have come back in the market in terms of the confidence and the outlook of the market that Greg presented, that there are a number of those projects in there as well. So we are actually now diversifying our focus in terms of saying, okay, we would like to have a portfolio of international oil companies because they look at LNG from a portfolio perspective. They don't need to actually make an offtake arrangement to get the project sanctioned. They have enough in the portfolio to make those projects go ahead. So we have a number of those projects like Nigeria Train 7. We got Lake Charles in the process there. So those are key customers that we know that project, when they decide to go ahead with the project, that project will actually get to FID. Then we also look at actually developer clients, say, but they're more than a developer client like Cheniere. They are actually really now an operating company, probably the second largest individual company in terms of producing LNG. So I would put them in a different group of customer that we know they will actually make the project happen as well. And then you got other customers that are really one-off project site location. So based on capacity and capability, we really focus on attention on saying which projects are likely to happen, which one we are best placed in terms of our unique position, and which ones we really want to focus on in terms of the other ones as well. So we feel confident that we've got the right balance now in terms of pursuits doing that. The other question is actually in terms of partners and capacity. And we feel, KBR is quite unique in terms of LNG business, that we have two major operating locations where we can do LNG projects from. We can do it out of US, we can do it out of London. I don't think anyone else can actually do out of two locations. It gives more bandwidth in terms of resources that are available across the company. And we can do, I'd say that 3 projects where we can be a leader ourselves, that we can execute across the globe. And the other projects that we can participate, where we can actually be a partner and let the partner lead, because the partner is a trusted partner for us. As you're familiar, that there are a couple of partners that we usually work with. We've done a lot of projects with JGC over the years, and we are pursuing a number of projects with them, and also with Technip. So we have a very good understanding in terms of how we execute projects. We trust each other's capability. And I think the reliance in terms of when one partner takes the lead and the other partners have different role, it works very well. We have proven execution in Nigeria, in Yemen LNG. 3 of us actually work together. So we feel quite confident that in terms of a partner selection, that we've got the right focus on our customers to pursue the right deals.
Yes, hi, good morning. Jerry Revich, Goldman Sachs. 2 questions. First, in technology, you folks have really been successful in building out the platform in Asia. Can you just talk about what's enabled you to do that? Not a lot of divisions of U.S.-listed companies can derive 2/3 of sales from Asia. So can you talk about what's driven the success there? And in terms of the growth outlook, how much of that is contingent upon continued growth in Asia versus other markets? If you could just flesh that out for us. And then in government services, really interesting bid pipeline. Can you just expand in terms of the types of projects that you expect to be the most significant opportunities and any that are new scope opportunities for KBR now that you're bringing all of the operating companies together? Thanks.
So let's start with technology. Thank you for the question. Yes, Asia is very important to the growth of the technology business, as you pointed out, and China more specifically. As we look at the portfolio, I mentioned the number of new technologies that we have ready to take to market. What we found in China is it's not with the Sinopecs and the PetroChinas, the big national oil companies, that are willing to deploy those technologies initially. It's some of the smaller oil companies, the teapot refineries, the teapot facilities in China that are more open to take that challenge of putting first-of-a-kind technologies in. And in China, they do projects very quickly, and they have a lot of flexibility. So these small companies in China, smaller companies, really want to be able to do something that's differentiated from the Sinopecs, from the PetroChinas, and be able to do these projects quickly and efficiently so that they're more competitive against those. And so that's allowed us to introduce technologies like KSAT, our solid acid alkylation technology in China. We started up the unit last year. One of the key advantages of that technology that we're very excited about is that the traditional approach to producing alkylate, which is a gasoline blending component, is through liquid acids. Liquid acids are intrinsically environmentally unfriendly. They're not very safe. And so it kind of defeats the purpose of clean fuels, and then you've got a way of making clean fuels that has significant challenges. And so what we've seen in our development is we put some really smart people, you've heard people being mentioned several times today, together, and we produced a solid acid catalyst, a catalyst that you can hold in your hand that's more intrinsically safe. And the people in China, or the companies in China, have been willing to because of the tremendous upside of deploying a successful project, have been willing to take that risk. Not only just an open risk, but a calculated risk, a risk that's based on the KBR name, a risk that's based on understanding that KBR commits and delivers successfully in China, in North America, literally around the world. And so that has allowed us to take what we've done in China and actually, in this particular technology, sign a deal in North America. And we're actually working with a North America refiner closely with Jay and his team. You might want to make a comment real quick.
Yeah, I mean, this is with the CVR, where we really brought the best of our technology offering and our execution team under a single project. I think this project will do a predictable outcome, will definitely improve yields, will reduce costs, and is going to be a safe plan in terms of what Doug mentioned of the acid handling. So it's a great project working together, and this is how we went together, Doug.
Right, exactly. Thank you, Jay. And I guess I'll just wrap up by saying that's the advantage of the global reach of technology. Right now, Asia is hot. Asia is growing. And arguably, they're growing in China, especially a little bit lower rate. But we're not just tied to China. We're tied. We actually have projects in Russia. We have some projects in the Middle East coming up. So the global reach that we're talking about really allows us to diversify our exposure to any one particular region.
Okay. So I'll comment on the government solutions pipeline. I think we have a really robust pipeline. We don't get overly specific for competitive reasons on individual opportunities, but we have talked about a few publicly. So NASA Sense is a very large contract. We know we're down to one of two. That should be awarded later this summer. We've just secured, LogCAP 5, which is kind of secures our logistics portfolio for the next 10 years. It's still got to go through the rest of the protest cycle, but we feel very confident in where that is. Our next largest recompete of the year we've talked about is our Jacksonville contract. We should hear something on that in the next few weeks, we hope, and we feel very, very confident on a high probability of win on that. So our near-term pipeline is good. Looking to new business, there are several larger opportunities that are new and unique where we're combining, and again, I don't want to be overly specific, but some of the science capabilities we have with some of our logistics capabilities and going after some contracts that support some different kind of clients. We are, in our engineering business, our systems engineering business, which we don't talk a lot about, it's a different sales model. There, it's a lot about multiple award contracts, task order contracts, IDIQ contracts we talk about. And last year alone, they booked over $1.2 billion worth of work. And I don't think any of the tasks, many of them were over $50 million each. So that business model, that's something we learned from the acquisitions. That was not necessarily a core strength of KBR. KBR is known for mega projects, and we know how to bid, commercial discipline, and go after these overseas large mega projects. But some of these acquisitions have brought in a new business model, more like the technology model where it's close to your customer, you maximize these task orders. So we're winning task orders often, and you're seeing some of those releases come out, and those are setting us up in new directions. So into the unmanned, counter UAVs, or into a work out at the Air Force Research Lab working on artificial intelligence with new sensors. So there are lots of smaller contracts, but it's a big, diverse portfolio of business that's growing. When you look at the human performance side of our pipeline, we've had the health and human performance with NASA. We won the Special Forces contract, which we now have. We're approaching up to 500 folks around the world. There are 2 or 3 other large opportunities in that space, both for the big Army at large. And remember, that was special operators, so Delta Force, Navy SEALs, the Rangers. That's who we're supporting under that contract. But the regular Army is also looking at how do we improve the soldier, how do we make them a better soldier for the future and take care of them. And so we're now hiring things like strength and conditioning coaches, physical therapists, nurses. These are new skills and new areas that KBR hasn't been in the past. So it's really changed the face. And there's both a large Army and a large Air Force contract that should be coming out in kind of the short next little while. So our pipeline is robust. We're very disciplined, because you can get scattered and chase too many things. And that's why I think Greg did a really good job of kind of pointing out the themes that we see in the market trends and fleshing that out. I hope that answers your question and helps. I don't know if you want to speak to your pipeline.
Well, I could say a bit of the direction of travel in the international government solutions part is looking at taking a greater market share. We see potential from the UK Ministry of Defence. There's some great opportunities coming up around large-scale base operational support opportunities, and also some very large-scale training opportunities, which through the sort of group capability we can better compete on. And I think there's a geographic dimension as well. We're looking at the Middle East as a growth area, again, enabled through some of the work that's in Jay's business. We feel it's an unexploited sort of geography that we can look to sell some of the capabilities that we've got within the business into the Middle East and offer some of the government solutions type capabilities out there.
And geography, the global footprint should not be underestimated. I think that's a huge differentiator in KBR. Part of securing LOGCAP 5 around the world was really the capabilities that sit here. Their ability to go into foreign countries, to understand local labor laws, understand the cultural differences of those labor forces. The Army recognized that as a strength. So as they looked at LOGCAP 5 as a reset of the theater and looking to make sure they had good contractors in different geographic areas, they wanted someone that had that kind of rapid response capability. So LOGCAP 5 is strategically different. There's more sustainment work in there, there's more O&M work in there, and that's purposeful so that if an event happens in the world, they have a contractor that can move rapidly and be agile. And I think the capability that's resident in Farhan, in Doug, in Jay, and Andrew gives us that agility that our customers are really looking for. It's a really big differentiator, not just for logistics, but for engineering and space as well.
Hi, Lucy Guo with Cowen and Company. So this question is for each of you to address the 3 businesses in terms of what are the major underlying assumptions between the base case of the next 3 years versus the breakout case. And specifically to Byron, if you can talk about LOGCAP and some of the opportunities in terms of getting more fixed price work perhaps, and the margin trajectory, for government services in particular, and for the other businesses, please.
I can
I just pause? We're going to go through. Mark's going to go through the assumptions on the business units in his portion of the material. So I'm going to just ask that we pause on that question for maybe later Q&A if it doesn't address, and then we can redirect on the other parts of. Yeah.
I'm sorry, you want me to answer the log cap one?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Wasn't sure you
Make
want me to
sure your
answer.
instructions are right.
All right. So specifically on log cap, you know, again, we tried to put some volumes out of historical data in the analyst day on Wednesday. So I think you know, that volume has been the last several years. You can kind of do your own analysis on what you think the future is going to be there. The fixed price nature of log cap, well, there's fixed price today. A big portion of our UCOM contract is actually fixed price, and I think the customer is very open to converting more to fixed price. Which, you know, what does that mean? That means you can get some better margins over time, especially when we apply some of our digital tools that Greg talked about with smart maintenance and productivity and those things. We can really drive down the labor cost and help our customer, help them be more efficient and improve margins. You know, a lot of log cap will remain cost reimbursable because it's so dynamic. I mean, we're reacting often to world events, and we're doing, in Eastern Europe, for example, we're doing a lot of exercise. I think there was a note out this morning about continued deployment and more exercises in Eastern Europe, and that's somewhat unpredictable as the Army rotates troops in and out, and we have to scale up and scale down. So I think the margin profile going forward will stay, you know, very normative levels for what we've seen on log cap, and possibly some upside there. Afghanistan has a riskier area, so there can be some better margin profiles just based on the risk-reward cycle there. And I'm very hopeful that we can convert certain elements into more fixed price work.
So modifying my question a little bit then for the technology and energy businesses, if you can talk to your mix within the businesses and how that may affect your margins going forward without talking about numbers.
Well, I think for technology, you know, I touched on it a little bit. We continually looking at those Horizon 2 and Horizon 3 type solutions, and as we move more and more of those into our Horizon 1 and increase those offerings, we continue. That really is the confidence that we have. You know, I look to maybe 10 years from now, we've doubled the portfolio once again, and maybe have some different markets and different things like that. That's what gives me confidence in the growth strategy and the growth projections.
I think on the energy side, I think as you heard from Stuart there, that, I mean, the low end of the forecast is really based upon one mid-size LNG project being awarded to us there in the 3-year period there. And based on the number of opportunities that we have, I mean, I'm happy to be challenged there, and I think we've got a lot more opportunity to grow on that one. And I think for us, it's not the margin itself there, because margins are pretty much, I mean, known in terms of what you can get in the LNG business. It's the absolute numbers and the size there. And that's quite significant when you book an LNG job. The absolute numbers are quite significant. And that's why I think the potential for breakout is also there as well.
Questions can probably go for the rest of the day, but we're gonna take maybe one more question from.
No, it's here.
Okay, Mike has given his spot to Tahira. So, we're going to take one more question, and then these guys will be here during breaks, and then after the session for a wrap-up.
Sorry, she needs a mic there, Alison.
Yeah, Veronica's going.
Thanks. This is Tyra, and it's not a tricky question. So, so this is more, I guess, for the space team. You know, we're hearing about 2024 moon landing potentially. You know, the budget numbers you just presented for NASA, do they include that, or is that all upside? And how would you be positioned if that was to go through?
So if I heard your question right, your question is about, with the focus on back to the moon in 2024, what does that do to our profile? You know, most of our NASA contracts that support human space exploration are long-term contracts. Many of them go out to 2024 or 2025. So we're already there as far as secured work. I do believe there can be upside as those missions change. We are working more and more with commercial partners. You know, many know that the commercialization of space launch is happening. And I think the next commercial side of space is going to be the lunar lander. We're actively participating in both the design of that, but really more on the operations side. That's really our expertise, is the operations of the space activities, and especially where they interface with human spaceflight. So we have not included any extraordinary data in our baseline. Most of what you'll see, and Mark will go into some detail on how that's built, is just our base load contracts at the standard run rates that run out through 2024, 2025. So we have not made any kind of assumptions on real upside in the budget. NASA's talking about if we go into a continuing resolution trying to get an anomaly in the budget, which I think would be just great for the country and the nation to get a little extra push to help us get back to the moon. I'm big on going back to the moon. I think that is something that we as a nation should do. There's a lot of good national reasons to do that, both from a science standpoint, but also from a deterrent standpoint. And so I'm a big supporter of them doing that. So we have not assumed any of that in our baseline. We've just assumed our standard mission focus that we have in NASA. Now we are looking to grow the NASA portfolio at other locations. So there's work coming out of Marshall Space Flight Center. We don't do a lot there today. There's work coming out of Marshall that has to do with payloads and processing work. We need to continue and expand our work at NASA Ames, where we're doing some really high-end work. So there's other NASA work out there, but I think our projections are pretty secure.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Great discussion, as always. We will break now, actually supposed to break for 15 minutes, but let's break for 10 minutes, if that's okay. And then when we come back, we'll have Mark and Stuart wrap it up.